All right, welcome to Pure Truth Podcast. This is um, your host, as well as producer of this podcast, Lucas Bealey. And today, um, I'm back, yes, of course, because the research that I did not. Um, Welcome to Pure Truth Podcast. This is your host, Lucas Bealey. uh, and producer Lucas Bealey. Um, so today we're talking about a little bit about Enoch because the study that or the research that I was doing um, didn't exactly take as long as I thought. I thought it would take, you know, a lot longer. But yesterday, after I went live yesterday, I doubled down and um, did research all day yesterday and found the answer. So yesterday, I talked about Enoch chapter 77, and it lays out a map. Um, and I talked about the seven rivers and how the seven rivers um, aren't necessarily they're just as the seven rivers, the biggest seven rivers within the area of where Enoch is, um, in that area. Um, and so I'm going to talk about that in a little bit, but don't forget to like, share, subscribe, ring the bell notification for more. And then in the chat, I have the link for Bewley, a comedy series. Um, Go check that out. It's a comedy series. It's also, yes, um, my testimony, and telling um, about the Lord bringing me out of my Egypt to my promised land. And this is only season one. Season one is the only one that is out right now. Um, but the whole comedy series is bits and pieces of my testimony, as well as God, taking me uh, out of my Egypt and into my promised land. So it's a comedy series as well as that. So um, check that out on Amazon. You can click the link in the chat, and it should lead you right to there and you can order that book. So yesterday again, I said that I was going to take time and do more research of Enoch's travel, and I did. Yesterday, right after I got off, I I did like I did more research, and it took the whole entire day. Now, I didn't the research that I did um, didn't take as long as I thought. So yesterday I said that I was taking a break because I thought that it would take, maybe a few days to get this research done, but I was able to get it done and find the answers um, uh, from the research that I did yesterday, because I doubled down. Actually, I tripled down, if that's a thing. I didn't just double down, I tripled. Like, I got right into doing the research right after, I went live yesterday, and I found answers. And so again, just talking about the 7 rivers that Enoch is describing, he's describing 7 of the biggest rivers in his area. So um, he also talks about 7 mountaintops that are the highest mountaintops in the world. You look those up, all of those are in Asia. Mainly all of those are mainly, kind of in Asia. It's interesting in Enoch chapter 32. It talks about how he went over summits of mountains. And in Enoch 32, I'll read it to you here real quick. Enoch, sorry, something pulled up on my phone. Enoch chapter 32, verse 2. And then I went over the summits of all these mountains, far towards the east of the earth. So he's going over these summits of mountains. Now, if you look above 2, in verse 1, it says, "And after these fragrant odors, as I looked towards the north, the mountains I saw, 7 mountains full of choice nard." So how many 7, or how many mountains? He says 7 mountains. And then in verse 2, it says that he went over these mountains to the east. And so, and then when you get to Enoch chapter 77, it talks about these 7 mountains. These 7 mountains that he's talking about that he went over are the same 7 mountains that he says are the highest, have like the highest peak. And it's actually interesting how there's so many mountains, kind of together that stretch um, uh, from China all the way almost to Russia. I forget what country, Turkestan. Like there's obviously that's where the Mount Everest is also located, but they're all throughout there. And so that's where Enoch is. That's those 7 mountaintops that Enoch is going over and going to the east. And it's interesting. And so you would say, well, what about the 7 rivers? I know you said in the last live that these 7 rivers are, rivers. Yeah, they're rivers, within that area. And there's 3 in the north and 4 in the east. 4 of these rivers in the east and 3 of these rivers in the north. And what's interesting is when you get to the islands, the 7 largest islands, there really is 2 of them that are in mainland, that are kind of in mainland. And the other 5 really are, kind of out there in the ocean, with no land nearby. And it's actually interesting. There are 3 islands that are in the north and 4 islands that are in the east. When you look this up, when you do the research, it's actually interesting. I found not only 2 islands that are mainland. So and those 2 that are mainland, they're up north. But there's one up north that is not mainland. That would be kind of in the ocean. And that would kind of be in the Atlantic Ocean, the North Atlantic Ocean. And guess what island that is? That would be Greenland. And that also is up north. So there's 3 rivers that are from Russia, and Russia is north. And then there's 4 rivers that are east. Well, there's 3 islands. It's interesting how there's 3 islands, 2 that are mainland and 1 in the North Pacific Ocean. But all 3 of them are north. The other islands that the Book of Enoch talk about are in the east. So, I mean, that's pretty interesting. I found that pretty interesting. So it's definitely excuse me here. It's definitely outlining where Enoch is at. It's definitely like Enoch chapter 77 outlines a map for you of the area of where Enoch is at this point. Like when you get to Enoch chapter 32, verse 1 and 2, you match that up with Enoch chapter 77. Because like when you're reading Enoch chapter 30 and 31, you kind of don't really know exactly where Enoch is, but we know once you get to chapter 32, you can line that up with chapter 77. And again, why can you do that? Because Enoch 32, 1, it says, I look towards the north over the mountains. I saw 7 mountains. 7 mountains. It's right there in Enoch 32, verse 1. He sees 7 mountains. And then you see in Enoch 77 how he's going, or he talks about those 7 mountains. So you see that the summits of mountains is mainly, well, obviously they're kind of connected to Mount Everest in some shape or form. And that's what he's talking about. So you see that the and then Enoch mentions that he's going east over the Ethiopian Sea, right? Well, if he's going over these mountains to the east, and then he says that he's going over the Ethiopian Sea, well, that means that those that say that the Ethiopian Sea would be somewhere in the Middle East or whatever, yeah, I don't see any evidence of that. Because going by the Book of Enoch, and I know you're probably somebody that would think that I'm somebody that's blowing smoke, but I do have plenty of videos that you can go on my channel, and I have a whole bunch of playlists. I On my channel I have a playlist of Enoch, where I talk about the Book of Enoch, and then I have playlist that is name for science, and if you go to the playlist where I have all the uh, live streams where I talk about the Book of Enoch, you can see where the Book of Enoch holds truth. I don't have time to go through that here in this live stream, but yeah, the Book of Enoch holds truth. I've I've been able to find truth from the Book of Enoch, and so that's what I'm saying here is when you look at the Book of Enoch, chapter 77, it lays out a map. You apply that to chapter 32, verse 1 and 2. Now you know where Enoch is headed. And he's headed east. And he's headed over the Ethiopian Sea. So, meaning the Ethiopian Sea is probably East China Sea. That we call East China Sea today is probably the Ethiopian Sea. That's so you can either say that I'm, telling the truth, or you can say that, and thank you for the thumbs up. You can say that I'm telling the truth, or you can be like, well, this guy's blowing smoke. But one thing that I hope that you do, no matter what you believe, is that you would do the research yourself. And because again, yeah, it's either I'm blowing smoke or I'm telling the truth. And what I'm telling you is that from the research that I have done, it is most likely that the Ethiopian Sea would be known today as the East China Sea. And if you follow where Enoch is going, you do end up somewhere in the land that we call America. I know it's probably hard for a lot to believe. It's probably very hard for many people to understand that, to grasp a hold of what I'm saying. But I did more research. I took a pencil, and I started right at the summits of mountains that Enoch talks about. And I went east and guessed where, like I drew a line, a straight line, a straight path east. And I'm telling you, if you do the same thing, guess where you land? Pretty much in the center of California. Now, I'm not saying that the center of California is the Garden of Eden. Like, I'm not, going there, but I will say it's a possibility that maybe California could be the land of Eden, or maybe somewhere in like America was the land of Eden. Now, obviously, we have had a flood since then, and the flood destroyed the earth. And so I don't know if we're really going to find the answer 100% for, the answer, but let's follow the evidence, is what I'm saying. And so, following the evidence that I have put out there many times in many live streams that you can go back and watch. Following that evidence, you find that it's very possible that at one point that could have been where the land of Eden was located. And then from there, you look at Genesis, Genesis 4. You look at the last verse, and it says that Cain left Eden, headed east to the land Nod. Now, America is pretty large, so I'm not saying I know where the land Nod would be. However, and yes, the land would have, changed, since the flood. But it's interesting. And again, all we can do is follow the evidence. And that's all I'm doing is following the evidence. And the evidence points to some archaeologists who are also divers in Lake Mendota, Wisconsin. They found canoes that they have dated back to around 4,500 years old. That would put us pretty close to the time of the flood. And so, just following that evidence, I mean, I know what people have said in the past, that most likely we came from Africa or, somewhere up in Russia. But think about it. Think about this. If Noah's Ark launched from Africa, headed towards Turkey, don't you think it would be possible that it would overshoot Turkey? The amount of time that the ark was traveling on water was not just 4 or 5 months. It was like 5, 6, 7 months within that, time frame. And some scholars would even say longer. You know, that's a really long time for it to travel on water. So what I'm saying is the amount of time that the ark was traveling on water. If it was put anywhere from South Africa headed for Turkey, most likely it would have overshot Turkey. And many scholars have said that Turkey is the resting place of Noah's Ark. Now, are they right or are they blowing smoke? But think about this. Turkey is not very far from the Middle East. And the Middle East is where people settled after the flood. So after the flood, you have people settling somewhere either in Iraq or Iran or somewhere in the Middle East. The Tower of Babel, somewhere within that radius. I mean, there's different locations that people believe is the Tower of Babel, but somewhere in that radius, scholars will agree that the Tower of Babel is somewhere within Iraq, Iran, or the Middle East. Within that radius. And you have to understand, Turkey is not very far from there. So for it to, it is very, very possible that people would have, that Noah's family would have settled in Turkey year one after the flood. And part of his family, generations after, maybe centuries after, maybe just a century or whatever after, settled somewhere in that area of Iraq, Iran, or somewhere in the Middle East. And that's where people migrated and settled. I mean, follow the evidence. So are the archaeologists that placed the landing, the resting spot of Turkey blowing smoke? Oh, I don't know. I don't think they are. Because it is very possible that they could have got out of the ark and begin to migrate to somewhere in that area. So again, if the launching spot is from South Africa, wouldn't you think that it would overshoot Turkey? And again, if the launching spot was somewhere in North Russia, headed for Turkey, being on water for that long, most likely it would overshoot Turkey. And so you got to think about that. You got to be reasonable here, and you got to take that into consideration. That most likely the two places that a lot of people who have done their research are saying that it most likely was from either Russia, North Russia, or South Africa. Well, both places most likely the ark would overshoot. However, get this. an ark, Noah's Ark being launched from Lake Mendota, not only you can draw a straight line from Lake Mendota to Turkey, where the resting place of the ark was. Not only you can draw that straight line, and seriously, you can draw a straight line and it goes practically to, like, right to the spot where they say that it rested. So not only you can draw a straight line, but that looks like a reasonable launching point. Because why? It's not going to overshoot Turkey. Being launched from where Lake Mendota is to the landing spot, to the resting place in Turkey. I mean, most likely it's not going to overshoot that spot. And so is that, evidence? Well, sort of, but I mean, again, following all of the evidence. And that's what I'm saying here is we can't just take one or two pieces of evidence. We got to follow all of the evidence. And when you put all of the evidence together, what you're doing is you're connecting the dots. And it is, I would say it would have to be 90% probable that we came from the land that we call America today. Now, it would have looked different. It would have looked completely different because before the flood, things were different. The flood changed things, but it did not change the location of where we are from. It doesn't change the location of where we are from. It changed the landscape a little bit of where we are from, but it doesn't mean that it had, changed the location. Now get this. In Enoch chapter 60, it also mentions two beasts. And I'm going to focus on one. One beast that it names in the book of Enoch is Behemoth. It says that the behemoth lays its breast, lays its chest on the land east of Eden. Whoa. Which direction? Let me ask you, which direction did Cain head when he left Eden? He headed east. The behemoth mentioned in Enoch chapter 60 occupies his breast on the land east of Eden. Now it uses a different name. However, it's interesting how it also says that it's a waste wilderness. A waste wilderness. I looked that definition up. It's mainly saying that it's a dying wilderness. Well, I don't know if Wisconsin would be like a dying wilderness, but I can say this. Wisconsin is known for being a wilderness state. And that's kind of interesting. That is very interesting. And I know there's a lot of states in the United States that are wilderness that are known for their wilderness. But that, what I'm saying is yeah, I'm like that maybe that's not a huge piece, but that's still interesting how even Wisconsin is known as a wilderness. And it mentions how the behemoth lays its breast, mainly its chest, on a waste wilderness. And how this waste wilderness is in the east from the garden, from the land of Eden. And in the Bible, it says that Cain left Eden and headed east to the land Nod. So again, just taking that one piece of evidence, I know it's not a whole lot, but when you add all of the evidence together, that's what I'm looking at, is all of the evidence. And see, I don't know if we're actually going to ever come around to 100% know where Eden is located, because things have changed. The landscape has changed from the flood. But taking all of the evidence, now I know there's still one more piece of this that still needs to be explored. And that is, what direction is the front of the ark, Noah's ark, pointing? So go back to the resting spot, is what direction the front of the ark is pointed. That's going to tell you what direction it was from and what direction it was headed, most likely. And so that's the piece of evidence that, who knows? Maybe I'll get a chance to discover, because I'm not a scientist, I'm not an archaeologist, and I do have a passport. So if I had the funds, I could probably get to Russia, but I don't know, because the landing spot of Noah's Ark, is a historical spot. Are they going to let me, be there without some kind of permit? And because I'm not, like right now, people see me as just an average human being, they're not going to let me have access to a historic place. And so I can only pray for one thing, that there would be an archaeologist or a scientist out there somewhere, or somebody in the science field that is a creationist, that would take the time to go to the resting place of the ark, and find, where the front of the ark is pointed. And don't forget to like, share, comment, subscribe, and ring the bell notification. So that's from the book of Enoch. So now on to science, because I do have, I wanted to talk about both subjects today. And so there are scientists out there that say that the world is billions of years old, and they can tell you, because they say you can tell by the layers of rock. However, they're the same scientists that don't believe the flood story. They don't believe. Now, it's crazy how people will admit that it's possible for a local flood, and they can see the damage of a local flood, but then they go, when somehow when we talk about a global flood, they do this, la 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 la. They don't want to hear it. But we know that it is possible to have a local flood. Why is it so hard to believe that there is a global flood, that there was a global flood? But they don't want to believe it, because if they did, they would have to believe the Bible. They don't want to believe that. They don't want to believe the Bible. They just want to keep their theory that the earth is billions of years old, and you can tell that by the layers of rock. But we know what a flood, we know what damage a local flood can do. And we know that a local flood is possible. And that is evidence that when there is a global flood, it's going to do a lot more damage. And guess what happens in a global flood? Yeah, in a global flood, water is going to take the ground out, and then it's going to carry that ground. It's going to carry the soil. It's going to carry those rocks. Excuse me. It's going to carry all of those things. And then what would the waves of this flood be doing? It would be dumping soil, dirt. And so where you have hills that have soil and dirt, that would be a soil deposit. Where you have hills, for instance, in America, there's a state called Idaho, and it's mainly full of hills that are mainly sand. Well, that would be a sand deposit. And what they have said for many years, and many people believe this, that that sand was brought here over millions of years, and dumped there by wind. That wind just picked up the sand and carried it, and that's where the land deposited the sand over mil, and hold up, wait a minute. Yeah, it's possible that wind might be able to carry sand particles, but it's not going to carry sand particles for miles and miles and miles. But I mean, you just look at a beach. A beach is filled with sand, and yeah, at times the wind comes and blows some of that sand, might blow some of that sand in your eye, which is evidence that wind can pick some of that sand up. But what I'm saying is it is impossible for wind to continue to carry it, because what does wind do? Wind picks up and then it dies. It doesn't Wind doesn't blow in the same direction for miles and miles and miles. You get a gust of wind, but then that wind dies. So it's not going to carry sand particles or soil for a very large distance. It's not going to carry that for a large distance. So that is impossible for over time that to happen, because it's not going to happen. So you have to go back to the flood. When it flooded, the waters ripped through the earth, and the waves from the flood deposited soil. And where there is a hill, where there's land that has hills that are like sand, that's a sand deposit. That's a sand deposit. And so, yeah, in Idaho, they have hills that are very, very high hills. But it's mostly sand, and that would be a sand deposit. And so there's also soil deposits, like dirt deposits that are really fine soil that you can use to plant crops. And those would be, again, deposited there because that's where they deposited that type of soil. And these waves are also depositing layer on top of layer. And that's how you get the layers. That's how you get the different layers, is these waves are laying the different layers. So the layers are not put together over time. The layers were laid by the waves created by the flood. So that's all I had for Enoch and science today. And again, like, share, comment, subscribe, ring the bell notification. Don't forget to go to Amazon, order Beauty, a comedy series, season 1, and I'm working on season 2. So don't forget to click that link and order that book. And again, the reason why I'm back on today is because I know at the end of the live stream yesterday, I said that I was taking a break, but I like double down, triple down on the research that I did, and the research didn't take as long as I thought. I thought it would take maybe a day or two, maybe 3 days, 5 days at the most. But it only took one day. Praise the Lord. I mean, the Lord just, He helped me get through. And so that's why I'm doing a live stream again today. And so, yeah, I'm glad of that. So praise the Lord. Thank you for showing up today. I appreciate it, and hope to see you again tomorrow, same time, Revelation Day.